My name is Jennifer Applegate, and I did the summary of Civil Peace. Civil Peace is a slice-of-life story about an optimistic man named Jonathan Iwegbu set in post-Civil War Nigeria. It begins by explaining how thankful Jonathan is for the miracle of his wife and 3 out of 4 of his children surviving the devastation of the war. A bonus miracle was that his bicycle, that he had buried in the same cemetery as his youngest son for safekeeping, after needing to pay £2 to keep it from the military, was able to be retrieved with very little damage. This is where the reader first sees the use of his motto, "Nothing puzzles God." Jonathan uses his bike to start a taxi service, and with the money he earns, he moves his family back home. Here he is awed to discover another miracle, that his house is still standing. Ever the optimist, Jonathan looks past the fact that the doors and windows are gone. It is more than what some of his neighbors have, and he is beyond content with his luck. His optimism carries over to his family. His wife, wanting to get back to the usual day-to-day life, makes breakfast balls for the neighbors, and his 3 remaining children pick mangoes to sell to the wives of soldiers for a few pennies. Jonathan, through his hard work, is able to open up his own bar for soldiers and other people with money. He would occasionally take trips down to the shut-down mine that he used to work in, where he spoke with his past co-workers, who are worse off than he is, many of them homeless and barely able to get their next meal. He goes less and less until eventually stops going altogether, preferring to focus on the positives of his life. Jonathan is able to get what he and the other locals call egg rasher, after exchanging rebel money. He accepts the £20 and keeps it tightly in his fist and hidden in his pocket. He is weary of being pickpocketed because he had seen a man collapse in near Asteria a few days prior after being robbed right out of his own pockets. That night, Jonathan hears a knocking on the door. His wife is already frightened as the knocking gets louder. After asking who it is, Jonathan faces a pack of thieves who heard he had money. The children and his wife start to scream for help from the neighbors and the police, but no one comes. The thieves mock their cries with their own, calling for the police and shouting "thieves" just as loudly as Jonathan's family. In the silence that follows, Jonathan asks what they want. The leader demands £100, and if Jonathan doesn't give them the money, they would search his house until they found it. Jonathan beseeches the thieves, saying he only had the £20 he had gotten that day, and that they could search the house and shoot him and his wife if they found any more money. The leader accepts Jonathan's words with a few protests from the others, and takes the £20 from Jonathan out the window. The next day, his neighbors share their sympathy, but Jonathan
Historical time period and context narrated by me, Derek Grimley. Chinua Achebe's Civil Peace was written in 1971 in the aftermath of the Biafran War or the Nigerian Civil War, 1967-70. During the Biafran War, the belligerents were Biafra, a secessionist state of Nigeria led by Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, and Nigeria led by Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon. Ojukwu was supported primarily by France and Israel. Gowon was primarily supported by the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union. The link between the economic motives of the genocide of 1966 and then the massive killings of the Igbo between 1967 and 70 was already established by those who argued that the struggle to control trade in the North between Muslims and Christian communities, coupled with conflict over the control of large reserves of petroleum resources, worsened by the highly horizontal inequalities, raised the bar for ethnic tension. And that's according to Vamby. According to Vamby, more and more scholars of the Nigerian conflagration that took place between 1966 and 70 are comfortably describing the fratricidal war that took 3 years between Biafra and northern Nigeria as a genocidal war. The Igbo genocide fits in the UN Convention of 1948's definition of genocide as the intent to annihilate in part or whole the population of a given ethnic group. The apparition civil war that had previously been used to describe the conflict between the Western-backed Northerners and the free-spirited Igbos gave a false impression that the war was balanced. Part of the outrage about the Igbo genocide is also that Western powers such as Russia, Britain, and the United States that coveted Nigerian oil deliberately assisted the Northerners to thwart the Igbo people's potential to control oil. According to Maurice Vamby, in 1966 the Igbo people in northern Nigeria rebelled against their political rulers and were met with stiff military reprisals, resulting in the deaths of 30,000 Igbos. Between 1967 and 70, an additional 3.1 million Igbos died of war, starvation, and hunger. Famine-ogenic policies ensured that what the Northerners could not do on the battlefield would be accomplished by starving Igbos into submission. According to R.T. Howard, given that it had all the ingredients of high drama and dark tragedy, and several close parallels with the present day, it is surprising that the Biafran War is not referenced more often. Perhaps the most important reason is that it coincided with and was overshadowed by so many other tumultuous events: the war in Vietnam, the Czech uprising against Soviet rule, and the student protests that rocked the West.
Narrated by Sidney Chaton. Achebe lived from 1930 to 2013. He was born and raised in Nigeria and referred to as the father of modern African writing. He has honorary doctorates from over 30 colleges and universities. He wrote over 20 books, novels, short stories, essays, and collections of poetry. His first novel, Things Fall Apart, is considered his best and is also the most widely read book in modern African literature. It has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide and has been translated into over 50 languages. He received the Nigerian National Order of Merit Award, which is Nigeria's highest award for intellectual achievement. Major works include Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, Arrow of God, A Man of the People, and Ant Hills of the Savannah.